Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hello. Connie here. And yeah, we're getting into more Mob Psycho today. I'm still trying to figure out what the fuck happened last time. Episode 4. 4. Not even like the beginning of a season. But episode 4. 4 episodes into a season. And we're introduced to what could possibly be and what should possibly be an endgame villain? No, I don't think he is. I think you guys have assured me that the enemies will get stronger. But, like, this guy is the thing that he's a famous psychic from the past. He's very powerful to where even Mob has trouble with him. And in the end, he erases Mob's memories of being a psychic. And then at the end, it's just like Mob's going about everyday life. Is this just going on in his mind, or is this actually happening? And I'm not sure. Like, I don't know what to think here. I really don't know what to think. Like, how am I supposed to view this? And again, this bad guy, like, he's too powerful for just a regular run-of-the-mill enemy to face at this point in a series. He like, this guy, he feels like an endgame boss. Everything about him, his character, his backstory, his power, the visuals we got in the last episode, like, the visuals were horrifying, were haunting. The things he did, it's like Mob and Reagan and all the other sidekicks there weren't able to save anyone. He was inhabiting this poor girl's body, stabbed the shit out of her father, just killing him like that with her hand. The only way Mob could do anything was by using an out-of-body experience, letting Dimple take his body while he went into the girl's body to try and force the psychic out. And in the end, it obviously didn't work. Like, seriously, what the fuck are we supposed to think about all of this? And here's the thing. I know the creator of Mob Psycho 1, who also did One Punch Man, he likes to kind of play around with that kind of thing, as we've, seen in One Punch Man. He likes to kind of, I wouldn't really say parody it, but it's more like he'll kind of play with the tropes. He'll use them in his own way to kind of go against the grain. I understand that. And that's actually really cool that he does that, and he does it really well. But when this just kind of comes out of nowhere, and it's such a high-quality episode, that, as I said last time, it felt completely out of place. It felt like it didn't even fit in with the rest of the series. Like, seriously, the episode was so high of quality in terms of its writing, its characterization, its art and animation, its visuals, its shock factor. It didn't feel like it was, it didn't feel like it fit in with the series up to that point. Like, again, this feels like it maybe would have been like 1 or 2 seasons down the road once the series really got its foothold and became something amazing and bigger and more expansive. Like, I think I compared it to, like, if you had the All Might versus All for One fight in Season 1 rather than Season 3. It would feel so out of place because the series evolved in a way to where that fight works from a narrative standpoint. Mob Psycho has not gotten there yet. It's not gotten to the point where this kind of narrative structure, where this kind of story element, where this kind of character works. See, this guy would make more sense as the full-on, straight-up, 100% leader of Claw, who we would not even see until like maybe season 4 or 5. I mean, granted, we saw like him in the shadows and all in season 1, but you know what I mean. He wouldn't be like a main factor and the main bad guy until then. It feels really early for this. But here's the thing. If there are bad guys who are stronger than this, and if this does get much bigger and much more, like a much bigger deal later on with the show, then maybe it'll work. But right now, and again, phenomenal episode last time, but it doesn't work within the context of the show we've had. It's an episode that's so far away from, again, everything else we've had with this series that it feels like a completely different show. And here's the thing. You could do a big, like, narratively strong episode at this point in time. The second episode of this season proved that with the ghost woman, who I can't think of what she was called right now. The urban legend. Like, that was a great way to do this kind of thing at this point in the season. Episode 3, having a big focus on morality and Mob struggling with what is right and what is wrong involved in doing this job. But this is like, it's like you went from step 1 to step 100 in the blink of an eye. And it's just, I almost feel like you can't do that. Like, you shouldn't do that. Skipping all those steps, it's like let's talk about it in terms of a recipe. Like, let's say you're let's say you're making a casserole. Step 1 of the casserole is to what? Like, to mix ingredients or something? By the way, I'm not like super knowledgeable about like food. Okay, let's say something I do know how to actually make. I don't know how to make a casserole. Let's say cookies. Let's say you're making cookies. So first step is to mix the ingredients together in a bowl, right? Yeah. And the final step would be, pulling them out of the oven and frosting them. It'd be like skipping from, it's like mixing them in the bowl. Well, actually, the last step would be like frosting them and then letting them cool and eating them, all of that kind of together. So it'd be like mixing all the ingredients in a bowl, and then suddenly skipping to just frosting and eating it all. And here's the thing, a lot of people like cookie dough, but you shouldn't do that, especially if there is raw eggs in there. And that's the point. You're skipping the crucial steps to turn that dough into cookies. It doesn't work. If you're building a chair, step 1 might be to put like 1 peg into the chair bottom, and the final step would be to sit on it. If you put the peg in it and then just sit on it, you're going to fall because it's not complete. It's not going to stand. And that's how this feels to me. Like, they're skipping ahead to, like, such, again, what I feel would be more fitting in, like, a season 4 or 5. Like, even season 3, this feels like a bit much for. For the pace that Mob Psycho 100 has been going at this point, this feels extremely, it feels rushed, but it also doesn't. It feels rushed in the fact that it's happening this soon, that something this big is happening at this point. But it also doesn't feel rushed because it's not like the pacing of the episode is actually rushed. The pacing's fine. The pacing of the episode is fine, but it's more like the fact that this episode is occurring already. So I'm really mixed on this, because again, last week's episode, it was an amazing episode. It was a phenomenally made episode. But the fact that it happened at this point in the series is so distracting that it's hard to take seriously. it's hard to understand the reasoning for this. This is more than just switching around the status quo with how these tropes in anime shows are done. This is, again, doing things so out of order that it hurts the overall quality of the product. Because it feels like it doesn't fit in with the show. But again, maybe it'll prove me wrong. Maybe this next episode, whatever happens, however things happen, I have no idea how this is going to resolve or anything. Maybe this next episode will answer that for me. Maybe I will be able to understand. But as of now, it's just like, it was not good. It was not good to have this at this point in time. And by the way, I just want to make perfectly clear, I am not saying that this is going to make me drop the series or even, like, make me do anything, like, super negative regarding it. Not at all. I have no plans to drop this series yet. Again, as I've said with other previous stuff, like with what happened with Marvel, with the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes series, my interest in the series has to drop below 10%. And here's the thing, my interest with this series actually rose because of last episode. Even though my overall thoughts on the quality of the series dropped, my actual interest rose because I need to see how this continues. I need to see where this goes. And, I mean, it could dive bomb with this episode. Who knows? But my interest is piqued because I need to see where this goes. So, don't get me wrong. I'm not anywhere near dropping this anytime soon. Again, unless this episode is so fucking bad, which, very unlikely, honestly. Even if it's really disappointing, I doubt it's going to be straight up terrible. But yeah, I'm excited for this either way. I have no idea what's actually going to happen in this episode. I have no idea how Mob's going to defeat this. I have no idea what is even happening at the moment. But we're going to find out. So, when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in once again, and for now, I will see you at the reaction. Okay, and we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I've talked about it before, but I'm going to talk about it again, goddammit. Setup and payoff. When you set something up in a series, the payoff has to be worth it. It has to make sense, it has to fit with the series as a whole, and it has to be worth the setup. The setup has to feel like, well, like it pays off, hence the word payoff. It has to feel like it was properly built up, that it properly was realized, that it felt fully complete once you reach that payoff. This both did and didn't. I am actually extremely mixed on this little, I guess you could call it mini arc here. I mean, it was only 2 episodes, but still. I'm extremely mixed on it because it felt in one way, very, very satisfying for what they did with Mob and his growth as a character. But in terms of the actual story that was going on, in terms of Mogura or whatever his name was, it felt extremely disappointing. So let's go over each part. So, Mob's growth as a character. This mostly happened through his time inside Asagiri's mind, through this fake world created by Mogami. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Mogami? Something like that. I'm going to say Mogami. So it's mostly from his time spent here. During these, the 6 months he spent within that in that mind, which is it's a fun little thing because you know how like you can dream, like you can have a dream that spans hours or days or weeks or however long, and you wake up, it could have even only been minutes that you've been asleep, and that's insane about like how your mind works and how dreams work and all. And it's kind of that same kind of concept here inside this mental world that Mogami created for Mob, which was also inside Asagiri's head. It's been 6 months. Mob has completely forgotten about having powers, and he completely forgot about his entire life that came from that. Eventually, Mogami, like being the devil on his shoulder kind of thing, inspired him to let out his rage after being bullied by this version of Asagiri and her friends. He let out his rage to such a degree that he knocked out most of the friends and was honestly probably about to kill Asagiri. But then one of the friends attacked him from behind, and she's like, "You better just die." And it's just... We saw his anger continuing to rise, and honestly, again, he probably would have killed them if it wasn't for Dimple coming in and reminding him of everything. Because the deal with this all is that Mob, he tends to keep his emotions, I guess you could say, as low as possible, and we've seen that before. We've seen how whenever his emotions get out of hand, that's when his powers unleash. And whatever emotion is controlling him at the time determines like what his power is going to be like. And we can see that blind rage and anger is clearly dangerous for him. However, we see, after he snapped back out of it, we see him almost as a different character. The rest of the time that he's inside of this mental world, he's basically a completely different character. Like, I'm not even joking. But this doesn't actually feel unnatural, because it feels like that this was something that had been built up for him. Through his questioning of morality recently, through his realization of a lot of stuff in just this mental world and everything, especially after being snapped out of it, thanks to Dimple. He's come to this point where he's grown so much, and he's letting it all loose in there because he needs to. So this is like the Mob we would have if he wasn't holding back those emotions so often. This is Mob if he were a normal anime protagonist. Let's put it that way. We see him confident. We see him very determined and strong. His expressions are so different. The way he speaks is so different. But it needs to be to portray this, to portray that that he's grown a lot through this. When he comes out of all of that, out of the mental world, basically defeats Mogami and all. And he has that little moment with Asagiri where she breaks down, apologizing and everything, because she's grown through this as well. We see that we see Mob handle things in a very mature, confident, and willful way. He's not just... He's not... Like, the Mob prior to these episodes would have not known what to do. He probably would have been a little panicky and unsure of what to say, maybe stuttering a little bit. But here he's just so confident in the way he speaks to her. And again, it's almost like he's a different character, but it doesn't feel unnatural. But, like I said, this episode's a mixed bag for me, because while the stuff with Mob's growth and development felt very well handled, everything with Mogami didn't. The first episode of this 2-episode mini arc portrayed Mogami as this all-powerful, unbeatable, insanely devastating spirit. of a really powerful psychic from when he was even still alive. So it's like this super, super powerful psychic had his powers amplified after death when he became an evil spirit. And he's kind of portrayed as this unbeatable force. And here's the thing, I know Mob is supposed to be excessively strong. I get that. And even in his part here in the action scene, we see that he presumably goes beyond 100%. When we see the question marks and all, it's believable that he actually went beyond in some facet. But Mogami's build-up as this unbeatable, super powerful villain, just to be kind of honestly taken out almost with ease, really feels anticlimactic. The first episode, last episode, episode 4, focused so heavily on making this guy seem terrifying, creepy, used some really horrific visual imagery, and some auditory imagery as well, that it felt like this guy was going to be this massive deal. And the payoff to his build-up felt extremely weak. Like that he was never a challenge in the first place. And it almost felt kind of silly that Mob was even able to be tricked into this mental world by him in the first place. Because it almost feels like he's been nerfed. Like, he's nowhere near as powerful in the second episode, in episode 5 here, as he was in episode 4. And that's extremely disappointing. And in fact, the entire kind of idea of it all changed as well. The first episode focuses a lot on some really horrific imagery, as I mentioned. It focuses on very classic horror style, just possession and whatnot, psychic battle, all of that kind of stuff. It's very, very insane and scary and intense. This episode, it kind of again, he becomes this devil on Mob's shoulder. More of a mental evil rather than an actual physical, terrifying, scary, violent, excessively just horrible, mortifying evil. He becomes more of this, like, almost realistic, you could say, like this mental evil. Like, again, the devil whispering to you on your shoulder. The kind of person influencing you to evil when you don't even realize it. The kind of thing that is real in real life, but again, is more of like maybe like a person who's so subtle in their maneuvers, so classy about it, so calm and collected that you don't even realize they're this horrible, evil, monstrous person. Great example. If you've seen Breaking Bad, Gus Fring is an amazing, phenomenal example of one of these kind of villains. The kind of smooth-talking, calm and collected evildoer who is so villainous, but the way they portray it doesn't come across as, oh, he's a monster. No, there are points where you actually see him laughing and being nice and kind and everything. There's points where you see him, like, have this almost kind of sass to him. His evil is in what he does and the motivations behind his actions, but his persona, the way he portrays himself, makes him actually more unnerving because he doesn't come across as this monster of a person. And it kind of goes to something I've heard said before. If monsters looked like monsters in real life, then people wouldn't fall for them. People wouldn't, how do I put it? People wouldn't be killed by these kind of people. Serial killers, the way they lure people in is by being classy, by being sophisticated, by being by having great personality and having great charisma. People like Ted Bundy, who was an attractive person and who was suave and cool, and that's how he lured all those women in to commit his horrible rapes and murders. He didn't look like a monster. He didn't outwardly act like a monster. That's how Gus Fring is in Breaking Bad, and that's kind of what they portrayed Mogami as in this second episode. More of the mental villain, more of the cool, charismatic, suave kind of enemy, again, who whispers in Mob's ear, who convinces him to use this evil, to use this rage for evil. And it completely contrasts with how he's portrayed in Episode 4. Again, in Episode 4, he's more of the actual monstrous villain. The kind of being you would never tangle with, you would never believe, you would never get caught up in that charisma for. Because there is no charisma. He's just evil. He's terrifying. He's sick and twisted. So to have this villain of this part go from this sick, twisted, horrible, evil, monstrous person who is excessively powerful and extremely skilled, to being more of the smooth, wise, devil whispering on your shoulder kind of villain who's more using their wits to outclass the enemy than actual power, who in the end is actually outclassed way too easily. It feels extremely disappointing. It feels like they changed his character. And it's... I didn't like that. So this episode is really split for me, because again, while the stuff with Mogami I couldn't stand, I don't like what they did with his character, I loved what they did with Mob. And to be fair, Mob is more of the focus. He's the main character. So what they do with him does kind of matter a little bit more. To be completely fair, it does matter more because in the end, it will have a bigger impact on things. It will be more important going forward. Now, the one thing I haven't mentioned is there is that one guy from Claw who is there, who captured Mogami's spirit at the end, after helping them stop him. What is his deal? Who is this guy? How far up in Claw does he rank? And why was he there to capture Mogami's spirit? And if Claw already knows about Mob and them, why didn't he do anything about them? There's a lot of questions that I feel are going to be gone into, obviously, in the future, but I just don't know how. I guess we'll find out. But yeah, so this episode, not the best payoff to how last week's episode set things up, but it also could have been worse. It could have done some really bad stuff with Mob's character in that half of the episode as well. But no, it did well. One other thing, I could see how that ended with Mob and the girl. I could see some people like trying to use that as shipping fuel. And it's like, okay, so there's this girl earlier on in this season. There's the girl Mob likes, and now there's this girl. Are we just forming a harem for Mob? No, seriously though. Seriously. There is legitimately stuff here that could be used as shipping fuel, and I know it's very minor, and I'm not even saying I use it as shipping fuel. I actually don't. Actually, I find the stuff from the earlier in the season more ship-worthy than this with the other girl from the beginning of Season 2. But I could see how other people would. Again, let's be honest, he changed her. That was a big thing in the end. This experience and her seeing what he did and knowing what he did through all of this and everything changed her. Because apparently she was like that in real life. Like what was portrayed in this mental world. But Mob changed her to where she broke down bawling in apology. And when he said it was okay and everything, she thanked him with this legitimate, genuine smile. And then later, when she was with her father in his hospital bed, you saw that she seemed really happy to talk about him and wanted to see him again. There is legitimate shipping fuel there for those who would ship this. I could completely see that. Again, I don't ship it, personally. But I also wonder if this character will ever return. Asagiri, I believe her name was. Because the girl in the first episode, I don't know if she's going to return either. And it almost seems like these characters are almost being used as plot points, as stepping stones for Mob's development as a character. And I hope that's not the case. I want these characters to return. I want them to have some relevance to the story going forward, because just having them be stepping stones for Mob's development almost kind of invalidates what they've gone through. And honestly, in a lot of ways, they're almost as interesting as Mob. So it's just like, I just feel like I want them to return in some way or fashion. Maybe at some point they'll end up cheering Mob on, or starting some fan club for him maybe, or something like that. Or coming back in an even more meaningful way. But we'll see. We'll see. Either way, yeah, this episode just kind of split thoughts on. Again, not bad by any means, but could have been better at the same time. Either way, tell me in the comments below what you thought of this episode of Mob Psycho 100 Season 2. And again, no spoilers in the comments. If you know what's going to happen, please do not let me know. I wish to remain spoiler-free. I wish to see how this goes on my own. So yeah. Just getting that out of the way. Either way, yeah. So thank you so much for tuning in. And for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.
And though you've come through many obstacles,